All right, everybody. Welcome to the NorCal Sports Network. Giants have an off night, and we've got a special guest in Jordan Elliot, big writer for the 49ers, 49er fan growing up, and he's going to break it all down for us tonight. What's going on with the Niners and what to look for this year. Welcome, Jordan.
All right, thanks for having me, guys. Big Giants guy too. I love baseball. I love summer, but right here, end of July, beginning of August, it's football season, and football's king. So it feels good that the king is back, and we're
yeah.
Yes, sir.
And I know you're a Cal Bear fan too, which we've got some. We got some connections there. My brother's on the coaching staff at Cal.
Hey, we're coming this year. This is the Rose Bowl before the Pac-12 is gone forever.
Yes.
This team we're going out on a limb. Nice.
Hey, you want to kill that?
I got him.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. So, well, let's get right into it. Let's start out. Los, you got any? Go ahead. Take away. What's your first question for Jordan?
Well, Jordan, appreciate you coming on. Training camp has started. I love my Giants. I love my Warriors, but the Niners have been my baby since 1976. So it's good to get into some football and talk about the upcoming season. And nothing moves the needle like training camp and all the speculation about this and that. We're going to put a little pause on the quarterbacks because I know everybody talks about that quite a bit. We'll maybe leave that a little bit towards the end. But my first question for you is, as far as training camp battles go, in your opinion, what would you say is an under the radar? The roster is loaded. Most of the positions are spoken for. But as far as starting positions goes, is there an under the radar training camp battle that nobody's talking about that you think?
I mean, it feels like they're all kind of under the radar just because of how important the quarterback position is and how much, that's going to be under a microscope. So I don't know if this necessarily fits, but the first thing that would come to mind for me is that starting defensive end spot on the other side of Nick Bosa. I think also because there's so much dialogue about Nick Bosa and what that contract number is going to look like that we're kind of forgetting that there's still, this vacancy. Samson Ebukam was a heck of a signing for the 49ers a couple of years ago. They bring him in as a guy who played primarily in a 3-4 scheme where he's standing up and rushing, in a totally different position than he was, joins the 49ers, has to adapt, learn this new scheme, learn an entirely new position, get his hand in the dirt. And he really started to pick up towards the back end of 2021. And last season, he was incredible. And then you also had Charles Omenihu, who they traded for midseason in 2021, who was just exceptional for them. So, Nick Bosa is the Defensive Player of the Year. He's just an incredible talent. And the scary thing is we haven't even seen the best version of him yet. That's probably going to be the next 3 to 5 years. Yeah. So I understand why he gets the attention he does. But it's kind of caused there to be a little bit of, an overshadowing going on where you lose sight of how important some of those other guys were. So due to those guys leaving to other teams in free agency, I would say the biggest battle that I'm looking forward to watching is who really seizes that other defensive end spot. I think Drake Jackson is a guy who I really liked. I watched him a ton at USC. As Dan had mentioned, I'm a Cal fan. I've watched a lot of Pac-12 football. I think that the Niners benefited tremendously from Clay Helton and his staff just completely playing him out of position and playing him in a role that didn't do him justice and enabled him to fall into the back end of the second round. If he had been utilized properly at USC, I think he would have been a first-round talent. I think he had all the athleticism and the chops to be one. So Drake Jackson's a guy. He's year 2. He has all these tools. He's really athletic. There's a lot to like there. By all accounts, he's gotten his body right, and he looks just like a totally different player than when he came in last year. Then you also have a guy like, Cleveland Farrell, Austin Bryant, some of these other veteran guys who maybe don't have the, athletic upside that we still get to see with Jackson, but they have the NFL experience and the pedigree of playing in this league and having a lot of starts under their belt. So I'm really interested to see what they do there. I think they could also, Eric Armstead's so versatile in what he's able to do. He's a guy who can kick out on early downs if they need him to. But I think they really want to get into a spot where they have him and Hargrave on the interior because I think that's going to put them in the most optimal setting as a defensive line. So, that opposite end Bosa is the one that I'm definitely looking to watch.
Kind of staying on the D-line real quick. the Niners have always had depth at the defensive line position. That's what they wanted to come in and say that they wanted to build around that area. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like this year the defensive tackles are a little bit deeper, a little bit more quality than the defensive ends, the edges, like you mentioned, bringing in Bryant, bringing in Farrell. Maybe they're kind of expecting, Kasarik to work his defensive line coach magic and make some things out of them. But does it seem to you like they're a little bit top heavy at D tackle and a little bit light? Because like if Drake Jackson or Bosa goes down, like one of these guys are going to have to step up, and who's going to be the guy to step up right there on the edge?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Like the way I'd look at it almost, I try to avoid cross sports references, but I like trying to make them when I think they fit. Like I feel like it's like, the edge is like you have this number one starter who's really good, but the D tackle group is like you have 2, 3, 4 where they're just, you have a great like core middle of your rotation. I think that's kind of where the Giants are at. The 49ers are at. Wish the Giants were at that. They have Eric Armstead again, who I think is a phenomenal football player. Doesn't get enough credit for all of the things he does and the way he impacts football games. But Javon Hargrave, I went back and I watched pretty much every snap he's taken over the last 2 years during the offseason for a couple of articles I wrote. I can't remember a time I was more excited for a free agent player joining the 49ers. And this is a little, it's lofty because the bar is so high, but I really believe he has the opportunity to be the same level impact free agent signing that Justin Smith was nearly 15 years ago and come in and have, or maybe it's been 15 years by now. I'm losing track of the years. But that's the kind of impact this guy can have. So, yeah, I would definitely say that the defensive tackle group probably has a little bit more
juice.
Yeah, I think the production will be there. Kevin Givens, another guy who flies under the radar every year, was developed in-house, has steadily seen his role grow with the team, flashes every game. You get 2 or 3 plays where he's really popping on film. And, I'm a big believer in Javon Kinlaw. I don't think it's been a talent issue. I think it's been a health issue, an injury thing. And I think that he's looking like a guy who's poised to be, maybe he'll never live up to the first round pick, and people have a hard time separating that at times. But to me, at a certain point, you have to just try to salvage what you can, right? And if he turns into somebody who's a valuable piece of that rotation, he can give you 10 or 15 quality snaps a game. To me, you're at least establishing a floor where there's still value there. And I stand firm that there's value there. And I'll go down with this, sinking ship. If he ends up getting hurt again or something happens and they end up cutting him and they don't bring him back next year, I will be happy to admit that I was wrong. But I've always believed in his talent. I really just think it's a matter of, can he stay healthy? And I think that a lot of the injuries aren't really – it's just kind of a freak thing when you have that knee injury. You're that big, you're that size. It takes a lot longer for those guys to recover. And so I would expect this year to really be the prove-it year. And I'm standing 10 toes down that I think he's a guy who can be a quality defensive line rotation piece in the NFL. And again, I'd be happy to eat it if I'm wrong, but I'm standing by it that he'll be an impact this year.
Yeah, Jordan, one of the things that I was looking at and watching this team, watching it be kind of built here this past spring, and with the draft and the free agents, the unrestricted free agents, the guys that didn't get drafted. What do you think the Niners? I mean, they drafted 2 tight ends in Cameron Latou and Braden Willis out of Oklahoma. I've heard some people say they really like Willis more than Latou, but Latou was a third pick, their third-round pick, and I know they can maybe cut a third-round pick because they've had some guys third round, Joe Williams and drawing a blank, the kid from Ohio State, the running back that they let loose a couple years ago.
Trey Sermon,
yeah, and a couple of other Hurts. They've had some bad luck in the third round. What do you think? Do you think that both rookies make it and that Warner makes it, or is Warner and Dwelly gone this year? Is this the year that there's a change? And then the fullback position at the same time, do they carry Coletto on the roster?
First off, for the tight ends, I just think it was time to try to aim to get younger and cheaper there and have some cost control for a few years. I think Ross Dwelly has been, a reliable depth piece for them. And, given what he was asked to do, I thought he did well, which is why he's made the roster consistently. I think the issue with Charlie Warner is that, he was brought on primarily to be a blocking tight end and serve as kind of that third tight end that they can bring on in those situations. I would imagine there was a little bit of discouragement last year. There was a couple times where he dropped some balls. Hey, everybody drops balls, right? Like, it happens to the best of receivers, tight ends in the league. There are a few that he dropped where it was like really, really tough. And I imagine the film study was pretty brutal the following week when they were going over that in meetings. So it wouldn't surprise me if they just got to a point where they're like, hey, this is a position where we feel like we can get better. We like who we have. That's one thing, and I think they really mean it, but that's one thing we hear from the 49ers brass a ton is they'll tell you how much they love these guys, but they're always looking to get better. And I think tight end has been, I've been saying for a few years now, if they could find even just somebody who's a serviceable depth guy behind Kittle who has some athletic upside, I think it would go a long way. And I think that they have two guys who are capable of doing that, who are rookies. The only pause I would have is that it's really, really hard to adapt to the tight end position in the NFL. That's usually a position where guys take 2 or 3 years to really hit their stride. You get the freak exceptions like Kittle who are breaking records in year 2. But, it can be pretty tough. And then as for Coletto, I mean, it's going to be hard because I think if they let him go, somebody else is going to pick him up. You have a third of the league is running a variation of this offense Shanahan's running now. There still is value in fullbacks, but they have to be extremely versatile. And if you had to describe Jack Coletto in one word, it probably would be versatile. So I would imagine that there's going to be a very tough decision. But I also can understand with how loaded the roster is, it'd be really hard to justify carrying 2 fullbacks. I don't think Kyle Juszczyk's going anywhere.
Yeah, you just hopefully if they can, keep him on the practice squad, if he was able to, not get taken away. I would think someone like Miami might want him down there, with their system being, basically the Niners or even the Jets. I guess maybe if they signed him, didn't cost him anything, maybe they get a 6th or 7th round pick for him or something like that, if he does well in the games and preseason, maybe he plus it's good to have someone like that in camp that if Juszczyk does, go down for a short period of time or something, you have somebody that can play that same position.
It definitely will be no surprise if when Niners release players that they'll go to Houston, the Jets, or Miami. All our ex-coaches. So they know these players, so don't be surprised if they go in one of those 3 places.
Correct.
All right, actually, hey, Mark Graves has a great question here, and it kind of goes in line with what I wanted to ask. And reading your article talking about running backs on Niners Nation, which was cool. He's Mark Graves is asking what percent of the offense will CMC be used, and I noticed that he was 21% of the offense last year, which is huge. And can he lead the league in rushing? Now, the question I have, what has happened with the league? I remember growing up when I was a kid, the second most important position that you ever heard about on TV after the quarterback was the running back. I mean, you had Eric Dickerson, Marcus Allen, Walter Payton, Roger Craig. I mean, the list goes down and down the list. And what has happened to the value? Because I know you talked about how the value of running backs, and I know that's been reported nationally as well. Why has that position been devalued so much? Is it because they're getting hurt more? Because I don't remember running backs getting hurt so much in the past. I don't know if that's something that's happening now.
Because cornerbacks now have to play flag football.
Yeah. So it's crazy to see a position devalued so much when it's such an integral part of the game.
I think it really comes down to just the way the game has evolved. It's really just shifting towards this getting guys in space. It's so funny how cyclical like college and NFL football is and how much they take from one another. And it's just like this endless circle where they're shifting into some version of each other and just kind of, repeating that. I agree. I don't know if you can see it, or I don't know if I move my head. I would picture Ricky Williams that's signed behind me because, he's one of my favorite players when I was growing up. Running backs were a big deal,
They were.
It was everything. Frank Gore obviously is a 49ers fan I love.
Right.
Big fan of LaDainian Tomlinson. I remember as much as, I'm not a USC fan, loved watching Reggie Bush at USC. And it's crazy to think about how, it's really just a position now where teams are kind of making this joint statement where they're like, we're not going to pay you collectively unless you're Christian McCaffrey, where we can basically, you could be a number 2 receiver at the same time as a number 1 back.
Right.
He accounted for, if I remember correctly, I think it was set. So after the Niners had traded, so this is, excluding 7 weeks before he got there, But after he had arrived, he accounted for nearly a third of their offensive output. He was responsible, I think it was 31% of the total yards. So a guy like that, hey, you have to pay him. There's there's no way around it. And we all saw the impact he had. We saw him excel with two different quarterbacks. And hey, if Trey Lance had been out there too, I'm sure he would have looked good doing it as well. And not to take away from the other guys in the offense and the total package, but really Christian McCaffrey is that common denominator when the offense took a huge lead last year. So, as for the second part of the question, Mark, I don't think he can lead the league in rushing because Shanahan, I think, is going to want to really limit how much punishment he's taking in the running game. I think he could lead the league in yards per carry and from an efficiency standpoint be near the top or at the top. I just don't think he'll have the volume to do it, but he's more than capable of doing it. I just don't think Shanahan wants that if he's laying out his perfect scenario for this season.
Hey, Dan, you want to take that super chat from Mark Hope?
Sure. Let's put it up there. Mark says, Jordan, will John add mid-season or is roster set? Well, it's pretty tough to know that, I would think. You can't.
Injuries.
Yeah.
I would say that the very least you're going to hear that he's doing his due diligence. That's one of my favorite lines. You always hear about if there's diligence to be done, you can assure that the 49ers are doing it. I would expect if there's a market for like a veteran edge rusher, if they don't sign one in camp and, maybe a few weeks into the season, Drake Jackson's looking good, but they're like, man, we just need a little bit more. Maybe they do make a move. They've traded for an edge guy in previous years, 2021, 2020, as well. They did with Jordan Willis, who stuck around. They obviously made the big deal for McCaffrey last year. And as much as you'd hate to see, I don't think they're going to be dealing first or second round picks, but the Niners do have those picks back next year. So it's like, maybe they feel a little bit more comfortable parting with some of that later capital because they know that they'll be back in the first round, barring another trade. I hope not, because it's made the draft season part of the year a lot more strenuous when finding things to talk about. But I think that there's room to add always. But like Dan said, it's kind of hard to tell now. But the roster's in a great place. I thought so before last season, I had wrote an article for Niners Nation where I argued that this was the best chance the 49ers had to win a Super Bowl since I think it was the 2012 team. It was what I was saying. So the last 10 years, I was like, this is the best team on paper. I broke down the position groups and why I felt that way. Obviously, that didn't end up happening, but I really do believe if Brock Purdy didn't get hurt, it's at least a coin flip game in Philadelphia. I'm not saying that they absolutely would have won and they would have beat the Chiefs, but they looked like a team that was a contender. And honestly, like, they feel like they might be better this year, which is crazy to think about. So they're in a good spot, but it's such a brutal sport. There could be injuries. There could be something out of hand. And I don't think Lynch is shy about maximizing. They know that the clock's running out, right? Like they can stay competitive, but it's really hard to be an actual contender. And I'd say they probably have this year, next year, and maybe one more where they're in a serious window of contention.
Can I piggyback on that real quick? Just something for my own information here. When you got the roster set and because I'm used to baseball, if you make a trade, money is no object really to some teams. Do you have to have money considerations when you're making a mid-season trade?
As in like space?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you have to the cap space.
You have to have the. So is their roster capable of adding a significant piece at the trade if it needs to be done?
As of now, I'm not sure what the specific cap space is. I would have to double check. I don't believe, depending on how significant the salary is, I don't think they're in a spot where they can make like a huge splash. I think they typically keep around 5 to 7, I think has been the kind of status quo the last couple of years for in-season moves, but they wouldn't be able to add like a $20 million a year player at this point.
Fair enough.
And kind of piggybacking on the whole trading at the deadline, thinking that maybe, like we talked about earlier, the edge rushers are a little bit light this year more than previous years. I think we got a defensive coordinator that is quite a bit more aggressive than the last few coordinators. Doesn't mean he's better, just means he's going to be more aggressive. I think the Niners, Jordan, are going to have sacks from Hufanga. I think Warner's sack total is going to go up. Greenlaw. I saw your article about defensive line stunts and how, guys can do all these stunts to free up people. And sometimes that's just only focused on freeing up other defensive linemen. But as you illustrated, it could free up linebackers. It could free up safeties. So one kind of slight pet peeve I've always had, again, with the Niners and their defensive philosophy is in big games, in big opportunities, in big moments, that 3rd and 10, Mahomes 3rd and 15. They've always traditionally just said, well, our 4 pass rushers are going to beat your 5 guys, and we're just going to rush 4. And a lot of times it has not worked. So I'm kind of excited to see what Wilks can bring to the table and be more aggressive. So do you think he is going to, in fact, incorporate that kind of philosophy?
I'll be honest, it's really hard because I don't think Wilks has had his defense in Carolina was pretty talented, but I don't think he's ever had a defense at the NFL level that I've seen that's been this good. So I'll be really interested to see how he incorporates it, because his background is with the secondary and with coverage, and he might be one of those guys where he's like, hey, this front 4 is insane. We're going to be able to get after guys rushing 4, dropping 7. I thought D'Amico did a pretty good job mixing in some blitzes here and there. Like, he got really, really gutsy in that playoff win in Dallas 2 years ago. Called a 0 blitz on 4th down with the game on the line. I thought that he did a good job of knowing when to do it, because they did it so rarely. When he did do it, I don't think the other team was prepared. And I thought that was a very valuable trait among many that D'Amico had. So whether or not they do it more, I would say, I guess probably just because of how little they've done it recently. But the thing that, Wilks it's going to be hard to live up to is knowing when to push that button and when to go for the kill shot, the way we saw D'Amico do it. Because, hearing him talk about football and just the way he went about his business, watching him work in camp, I was surprised the Niners were able to keep him for an extra season, keep him around for as long as they had. Because, I remember watching him with the Eagles, with the Texans when he was playing. Always a very respected player, but he's a brilliant football mind. He is going to do extremely well in Houston, I have no doubt. So I almost feel bad for Steve Wilks in a way, where it's like you could look at it like, okay, he's coming into this great situation, great culture, great team, great place to be. Who doesn't want to be in the Bay Area? But at the same time, man, you got lofty expectations. The last 2 guys before you each had consecutive years as a top 5 defense. Now it's all the pressure's on you. So I think that Steve Wilks is a guy who's been around the block plenty. So it's not like he's some unheard of assistant that nobody's really familiar with. That's going to shrivel under the bright lights. I think he's more than capable of handling that pressure. But it is something to watch for, because the Niners could finish as the 6th ranked defense in the league this year, which would be great, right? But that would technically be regression. So it's really hard when the standards set this high. As you guys know, as lifelong 49ers fans, it's like, man, when you come in after 15 years of Joe Montana and Steve Young, you could be a pretty good quarterback like Jeff Garcia, but still a little bit of a step back, and people are going to feel a certain way about it. So I think the defense is no different. When the standard is set that way, you're going to have an issue with it if you don't live up to it.
I would absolutely love to see this defense with the 90s and 80s rules, where you can hit the quarterback, you could hit wide receivers. As good as they are right now, if this same talent could go back in time and be in the 80s and 90s, oh my God, that's when defenses could carry teams to Super Bowls, and you can have an okay quarterback. But
back when you had the Bears and the Giants in the mid 80s.
Jeff Hostetler won a Super Bowl, but in today's league and today's rules, the offense has got so many advantages. So it'd be scary to see.
Jordan, we're talking about the defense, and Steve Wilks coming in as the defensive coordinator. I mean, his big thing is his specialties really in the defensive backfield, and he's brought in the guy Isaiah Oliver, right? Came from the Panthers. Looking at the linebackers, I mean, it's going to be tough when you get down to the linebackers. We know it's going to be Warner and Greenlaw and Burks. Those 3 guys are shoo-ins, barring any injuries and stuff. But the last 2 spots coming down to, it looks like probably Flanagan Foles, McCrary Ball, or D Winters. I think 2 of the 3 make that. I don't know. Maybe Jalen Graham has an outside shot, but he's I like him, but I think he's probably projected to the practice squad. What's your take there? And then I'll follow that up with the DBs.
I just think that at the end of the day, whoever is going to fill those last couple spots has to really prove themselves. on special teams, and Flanagan Fowles has been really good on special teams. So it's not saying that he's guaranteed a spot because of it, but man, you better be really impressive with what you're doing on the defensive side, or show you can at least be a similar contributor on special teams, because I think that the 49ers value that so much in having a guy that can double dip and be depth at linebacker, but also start and be one of those 11 guys on the coverage unit. So
that's
really
where Burks is great. Yeah,
absolutely. And he for sure, I think he's absolutely going to be the starting backer there with Greenlaw and Warner. They're not really in base too often. They typically tend to be a nickel with two linebackers, but I think he's a veteran. They like him a ton. So I think he's there. I would say Flanagan Fowles is probably like the fourth guy where it's like he's not guaranteed a spot, but he's been there and he's proven himself. So it'll be hard. And then I really like McCrary Ball. I think that he's a guy that can be really good. But at the same time, like there's a lot to like about D Winters. Is he a guy that'll make it through waivers? So it's going to be that's definitely one of the best battles in camp too. So I would probably, you know what, if you have time, have me on again in the next couple of weeks after I've had a chance to watch a few more practices with pads on. I'll probably have a better answer for you.
Yeah, the pads. Whether the pads come on Monday?
Yeah, Monday.
Okay. Yeah, that's really when. I mean, gosh. I mean, I played football and I wasn't bad in football, you know, but I was great out there without pads. You know, I was like,
them pads slowed you down.
Put those pads on, you start getting hit a little bit. It's not as fun.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's why I became a, place kicker. So,
hey, that dude D Winters is really fast. If he picks up the nuances of the game, he's got a lot of speed.
Hey, MF has a good question. Still sticking with the defense. He's asking who's the third linebacker next to Warner and Greenlaw.
He just answered that.
Burks, it's going to be Burks. It's been Burks to start camp, and I think it's his job to lose. I don't think it's solidified, but
because he's so good on special teams, this is a big notch in his belt, right?
It's hilarious too because in 2021 the Packers were so bad on special teams. They were one of the worst special teams units in the last few seasons league wide. But Burks was just incredible. So it's like the 49ers took away, they beat them in the playoffs on the road with a block punt.
Special teams.
They take away the special teams ace from this team where he was really kind of the glue holding whatever was left there together. So I thought it was really funny that as a unit they were terrible, but Burks was just by all metrics was incredible. So, we talk so much about the draft, and it's important with football because of how short the shelf life is. But the pro personnel department for the Niners has been so good at bringing in guys from other teams who are veterans with experience and finding roles for them on this team.
All right, this is this super chat here from Mark Hope. Thank you, Mark. Donates $5, and it was kind of lead into what I was going to ask you about the DBs. He says, Jordan, I've got myself in trouble saying the D hasn't got off the field in big moments in the past 4 years. Your thoughts on the secondary? Do they have it? And I'll let you answer that, and then we'll get to who you project to be on the squad.
I think that they do. So I think that Travarius Ward was a really good signing. I thought that he was their best, man cover corner they've had in a long time, where you could really just leave him on an island with a guy. He could run. Richard Sherman's first ballot Hall of Famer, incredible player. I just think he was at a different stage of his career when the Niners got him. So I don't think it's really fair to compare them. A little bit different styles too. He's a guy who probably the best zone corner I've ever seen. So he's been good. And then, Lenore really finished last year strong. And when we talk about corners, the main thing you want to always focus on is coverage ability. But one area that I think that Ward and Lenore really stood out was, I'm going back, for anybody who's familiar with my work, I did some series where I was pulling game film from last year. They were really good against the run and setting the edge and just getting physical. And there was a hit that Lenore put on CeeDee Lamb in that playoff game where, these guys are professionals, but that stuff sticks with you. When you get drilled like that, especially by a guy who's smaller than you, it creates a timidness. Just because these guys are, exceptional athletes doesn't mean they don't feel pain and they don't have that same hesitation any of us would get. So I think that they really have a level of physicality that is rooted in this defense's identity as a whole, which is why the relationship there is so strong.
Well, interestingly, in 21, both Lenore and Thomas were drafted. Was it 21 or 22? Anyway, in 22, Thomas, the third rounder out of Oregon, and Lenore was a fifth rounder, I believe, out of Lenore was out of Oregon, and Thomas out of Michigan. I'm sorry. Thomas was the guy that played in the NFC Championship game against the Rams, and he looked like the guy. And then last year he kind of just fell off the planet, or something. He was not even around, it seemed like. And all of a sudden, Lenore steps up his game. Is Thomas in jeopardy of not making this squad this year?
I don't think his spot is a given. I think a lot of times with those third-round picks, they get definitely 1 year, a lot of times 2. I did a really good piece. I might just repost it because I don't want to have the same conversation again. But I did a really fun piece last year with Scott McLuhan, who used to be the 49ers general manager. Yeah. Brilliant football mind.
This was Seattle too, wasn't he? Was Seattle?
Yeah, Seattle. Yeah. Spent some time with Washington too, I believe. Yeah. He did a really good – he spent a lot of time with me just, telling me the ins and outs. And the whole point of the article was, what is the preseason and training camp like from a GM's point of view? And you're filling out this roster. You have 90. You have to cut it down to 53. And he kind of talked about, hey, if we took a guy in the third round, he's going to get at least a year. We're not cutting a third-round pick unless there's pretty much legal issues or a career-ending injury, right? So – they're going to get at least a year, a lot of times 2, but we're heading into year 3 now. So I think, he's going to have to go out there. He's going to earn it. And he has great physical traits, right? Like, that's the thing, is that it's so hard to contextualize these things sometimes, because some guys come in and they immediately, you can tell right away with these guys. Fred Warner in 2018, Greenlaw the year after, even Kittle his rookie year. You can tell there's these flashes where you're like, man, this guy's going to be a 5-10 year NFL vet. But a lot of guys take a couple years to adjust to the league, right? Like, it's going to take some time. So you can have all the traits in the world, and you might be a year or 2 away from really having a firm place in the league. And Thomas could very easily just be one of those guys where the physical ability has always been there, and it's just going to take a couple years to hit his stride. And then the alternative is like, hey, there's plenty of guys who are great athletes that just don't make it in the NFL. It's a really tough business. It's a tough league to stay in and, hold on to a spot in. So I'll be interested to see how it plays out. But
I would think Thomas has he definitely has the mindset of a corner. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's got that brashness, that belief, that confidence of what a corner needs to succeed. You mentioned best cover corner. We were talking about Ward and stuff. I got to just say this. It came to my mind. I think this guy would have had a Hall of Fame career had he stayed healthy, and that was Jason Verrett. I never saw a guy cover so well, but man, did that guy have the worst luck when it came to injuries. But when he was on the field, he was like glue to the receiver.
He was a special player. He was really good at TCU, really good with the Chargers. I apologize if this is a little – I don't want to – go off to the side too much. But one thing that always bugs me, covering football, is there is a higher rate of injury than other sports. But this rings true for all sports. I hate when these narratives get created that it's like the player's fault that they got hurt. And so, like, I know you guys are all baseball guys. I think it's a little different if it's like a dumb injury, like Joel Zumaya. I don't know if you remember on the Tigers. I think he like tore his ligament in his elbow playing Guitar Hero or something, right? Like something like that. It's like, okay, man, like, freak things happen, but it wasn't like it happened training or it happened when he was playing. It was something that you did when you were off in the off season. Stuff like that happens. Okay, I can understand there being a bit of hesitance to, pass off the blame, right? Like we're all adults. We have to be responsible for maintaining, their livelihood is their bodies and staying in shape. And if you're doing dumb things that are going to put you at risk of that, that's a different story. But when these guys get hurt on the field, in practice, when they're playing, it's like people like accost them and like hold it against them as if they are making a conscious choice to get hurt, right? And Jason Verrett's the perfect example, Dan, where this guy just had terrible injury luck. And you could see how devastated when he went down at camp a couple years ago. You could see how devastated everybody was when he went down because his teammates knew how much he'd worked. And, these are gladiators. And these are guys that are out there beating the crap out of each other every Sunday, 17 weekends out of the year, and they were just a wreck watching one of their guys go down like that. And I just think that it's really unfortunate that we have a hard time, it feels like collectively as sports fans, understanding that injuries are a very terrible and unfortunate part of this thing we love so much, that is sports. And like we hold it personally against athletes, it feels like. I'm not saying any of us here do, but just in general, I feel like that happens a lot. And I just think it sucks because there's got to be nothing worse than having injuries ruin a career, like you'd mentioned, Dan, and then having people like pin the blame on you as if you were just
like he wanted to get injured. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you. Go ahead, Los.
I was going to say, I personally think that the people that make most of those comments and complaining about, players getting injured never played sports. I didn't play football, but I played basketball and baseball. I pulled my hammy. I rolled my ankle, and football is just like such a physical sport. So for fans to come out and not know, the physical demands that come with playing at that high of a level, I think they're the ones that most of the time are making those kind of comments.
Hey, Los, what if you drop a piano bench on your toe? How about that? Does that qualify?
That would freaking hurt a lot.
Hey, here's something that I would try to propose to the league. I know they eventually want to go to 18 games because that was part of the thing with the owners going to 17, then getting to 18. Talking about player safety with all the concussions and everything, why not give these guys college doesn't have any preseason games. They all count first game, some guys, sometimes we see a great college matchup, a top 10 matchup week 1. And it's like, almost every year we see one, and whether it's Ohio State versus what was the one we had the other year? Ohio State versus Washington or something like that. Games like that. Why not go to one preseason game, and then if you're going to go to just go to 18 regular season games, but have 2 buys. Give these guys two weeks built in so that they can recuperate. Have somebody has a bye. Everybody can have a bye. Starting somewhere in week 4 or 5, and then another one. From week 11 to 15. Just give these guys a rest, man. I just don't understand it. What do you think? You think that we'll ever see anything like that, Jordan?
Yes, and I'll tell you what. This is my conspiracy, or I don't know if my hunch, whatever you want to call it. I think you'll see a second bye week when they inevitably make the move to London and they put a team there, and they'll have whatever team's going there have an additional bye week after that, because I don't think the players are going to go for it otherwise. It's a brutal trip flying over there, especially if you're going from the West Coast. And I would say before 2035, there's going to be a team in Europe that's full-time. I think the Jaguars definitely are a team where they've kind of flirted with that. Obviously, the owner's been very open to how lucrative the opportunity is there. I've had the pleasure of meeting some great, very loyal 49ers fans from, England who are, they're watching these games that are 1 o'clock kickoffs. For us, it's 11 p.m. They got work the next morning. There's a huge appetite for American football in Europe. And the NFL has been the best ran sports league in terms of, operating as a business in my lifetime. And I don't see a world where they ignore the lucrative opportunity that's there. So I do think it'll happen then. But in the meantime, I don't think they're going to cut the preseason games, because what's crazy to think about is there have been NFL preseason games that have outdrawn like World Series games in terms of like rating and audience and stuff. And I love baseball. I love, the Fall Classic and the camaraderie and just everything. But it's wild to think about that the NFL preseason in a meaningless game outdraw the pinnacle of a sport that's been around for 150 years. So I would be surprised. But I think that also the other thing is, now that the roster cuts are just at the end of the preseason, there's not as much pressure to see these guys week to week to make those decisions. They have the entire month of August to kind of make those decisions.
Yeah.
The game is definitely going more international. By the way, did you go to the Mexico City game last year against the Cardinals?
I did not. I wish I could have. I had some obligations here I had to take care of, but I heard I had some friends who went and they had a blast. Absolutely.
I heard that was like one of the wildest, most raucous. I mean, Arizona was officially the home team, but it was 98% Niners, fans. I mean, if you're an Arizona Cardinal fan, it's pretty tough to spend a lot of money and travel to watch your team. And it's going to even get tougher this year when they're about 3 or 4 win team, I think.
Right.
I'll tell you guys what. I don't know if any of you guys are soccer fans. I'm a big Liverpool fan, so I watch a lot of Premier League. The way that the energy that they have for that sport, if that transferred over to American football, you would have one of the best home field advantages in the sport.
Yeah, it'd be insane.
Yeah,
that's a whole different level right there. Because that's country versus country. A lot.
Yeah.
Of
Well, honestly, if baseball fans in South America or in the Caribbean, it's just it's almost similar as it is in football in Europe.
Yeah,
they love their baseball down there.
Yes.
Very passionate. They got the drums going. They got the music going. It's a party atmosphere. It's not.
You saw the Mexico City, series. You saw it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you saw it in the World Baseball Classic here in Arizona.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. What's going on with Darrell Luter? I know he's not on. He's on the PUP right now. How long is he expected to be out for?
I haven't heard an update on that, and the PUP list in the this stage of the season is very different than the regular season. So a lot of those guys, it's not as severe. Like they can just be put there and then immediately activated off, if I recall correctly.
Just allows them to add another guy so they can have 90 minutes. Right?
And there's so many times where they'll make a signing and people are like, oh, why'd they bring that guy? And it's literally just to have an extra body during camp to get through these practices. So, I haven't heard any updates, but I'm really excited to see him play. I had a great discussion with his defensive coordinator at South Alabama, who kind of broke down his scheme, mentioned they watched a ton of Niners film, and that was one of the things they modeled their defense after was how the Niners have been playing. So he thought the fit was really good. I apologize, it's been a few months ago, so I'm kind of struggling to remember some of the details of it outside of that. But the main takeaway was that he really thought he was a good scheme fit and that he really excelled in press man coverage. So he's definitely a guy I would expect to see getting up, jamming guys at the line. And, it's never a problem to have too many guys that can cover in a league where teams are throwing the ball 65% of the time, which, we talked about at the beginning, how much the league has changed nowadays. You got guys going empty on 1st and 10 with, nobody in the backfield. It's not I grew up watching I formation, fullbacks and neck rolls on the linebackers. I'm only 58, so I can only imagine how it is for people.
Yeah, we got another question for you from Mark Hope. Says thoughts, health of the game of football, NFL versus the NC2A.
So would you mind elaborating a little bit on that, Mark? Sorry, I want to make sure I answer your question adequately, just like in terms of health of players or like the state of the leagues. Or
I think he's trying to compare both, as far as, the NFL versus the college football. And, is it healthy? I get, maybe he's asking, is it healthy that they have a competition? Maybe I'm not sure.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm answering properly. I can try and,
Yeah, it's a general question. Mark, maybe elaborate a little bit more on that. Come back to you on that. Jordan, I'll ask you this: who's a guy on both sides of the football, offensive and defense, that could kind of come out of nowhere and be a huge contributor to the team for the season? I'll just give you my two real quick. I think Kalia Davis is a freak of nature. He's a very fast, big defensive lineman that could wreak havoc on the inside if anything were to happen to Armstead and Hargrave. Watch out for him, Kalia Davis. He was hurt all last year. And then on the offensive side, I think Feliciano was brought in possibly to be a swing guy, but I got a feeling he's going to beat out Brendel at center because he's just a bigger, more physical player that maybe they might need against the Cowboys or the Eagles in another playoff game down the road. Give me your two guys and maybe make a little comment about both of those guys.
So admittedly, without having a chance to really see these guys in pads yet, I think this is probably, I'm going more based off of kind of what I've seen prior. Last year I was really big on Jordan Mason. I thought he looked like the best running back in training camp. I had written about that a little bit last year. which again can be hard, especially on days like today where they have no pads on and stuff. But he just looked decisive. He looked like a guy that knew where he was going to be going. The instincts were really good. I think he has a chance to kind of turn into this kind of thunder to pair with McCaffrey's lightning. I apologize for the terrible analogy, but I think that he's somebody who absolutely could fill that role for them and kind of be that de facto number 2 back. Elijah Mitchell is a fantastic player as well, but to me, there's just something about Mason. And if I'm filling out a pecking order myself, I would prioritize carries for Mason over Mitchell just based on my preferences. So I don't want to say Jordan Mason because I feel like he kind of did come on last year, but I think he is a guy that will continue to break out. Some of these are really hard because I think that a lot of the guys who are younger, that like I really like Ronnie Bell. I don't know if Ronnie Bell is going to make the team even because of how deep they are at receiver. I know Brandon Ayuk's getting a ton of love, deservedly so, for the breakout he's going to have. And I didn't think he had a terrible year last year, but I feel like people kind of gave Deebo Samuel a hard time. And, Deebo's a guy where when he's on, there's no other player in the NFL like him. So I would say, I apologize if this isn't answering, the question directly.
Yeah, I know it's hard to say without seeing him in pads, but just kind of like what you read and what you've seen.
I would honestly expect the guys who've been there to bounce back a bit, if that makes sense. Like I would expect to see like an all-pro caliber season out of Deebo. Like I'd feel much more confident saying that than saying Ronnie Bell. Because again, as much as I like Ronnie Bell, I thought it was a great pick. I did some mock drafts with Ronnie Bell prior to the draft because I thought there was a good fit there. So I
had him going too.
I can see that panning out, but it's going to be really hard. And so I would say him for sure. And then, as for the defensive side of things, I think it's going to be Kinlaw. I went back and I watched, again, I am totally okay with anybody disagreeing or being like, you know what, it's been 3 years. I haven't seen it yet. I'm tired of getting my hopes up. Totally respect that. But when I go back and I'm watching these games, like that first game in Chicago, the very first snap of the season, he demolishes, I believe it was the right guard, with a club move, and he's in Justin Fields' face and forcing an errant incompletion, immediately. The third or fourth play of the game, same thing, where he gets in the backfield, forces him to step up. I forget who it was off the top of my head, but one of the ends came in and cleaned up a sack on a pressure that Kinlaw created. And I'm like, man, if he can find a way to stay on the field, this guy is a disruptive force. And it's only going to get easier having Bosa and Armstead flanking him or having Javon Hargrave right next to him. So, again, he's kind of been there before, but this team is so deep that I think it's going to be really hard for some of these guys to come in. And, Kevin Givens is another guy where I think he's going to have some games where he looks really good. And he's kind of bumped up the depth chart a little bit more just based on some of the departures they've had. So, if we're going guys who are established, I'd say that. And then if we're going rookies, I would say Darrell Luter and Ronnie Bell. I really do believe in Ronnie Bell. I think he's going to be an exceptional slot receiver in the NFL. One of my favorite interviews I did this past offseason was with Jay Feely. He's a 14-year veteran as a kicker in the NFL, also went to Michigan. So naturally, I talked to him about Jake Moody, but I was like, hey, you're watching every Michigan game very intently. What are your thoughts on Ronnie Bell? And he had a lot of really good things to say about Ronnie Bell. And as somebody who spent a decade and a half in the league, he's like, I think he's going to be a really, really good slot receiver for this team for a long time. He has all the chops to be a guy who, maybe isn't going to be this standout number one wide receiver, but is going to be a consistent, reliable option that sticks on an NFL team for a while.
Very good route runner.
Hey, Mark, he kind of elaborated a little bit more what his question was there. I'll put it up. He says, betting has changed things. I just feel like the college game is more exciting to watch and the replay system is way better. I feel like the college game is healthier from a purist standpoint.
I think college football is just there's a different energy, right? I'm born and raised in the Bay Area. I'm a California guy. I'm not, I didn't spend Saturdays at, tailgating down south, but I watch a Saturday night game between LSU and, Florida, or, a game at Texas A&M, or a Saturday afternoon at the Big House in Michigan. And I'm on my couch here in California getting, amped up watching this. There's just a different feel to college where it just feels a little bit more like the camaraderie is a lot greater. Right. You have the bands playing. I will say, though, I'm interested to see how it goes with this NIL stuff, because it's really I feel like a lot of this stuff has been happening already, and like everybody knows it. It's just kind of like this unspoken thing. Like it's not like just all of a sudden teams are like, oh, we can pay players now. Like cool, we've been waiting forever. Like they've been doing it forever.
Yeah.
They just can do it legally now. So the only issue that I have is that it feels like the parity might be hurt a little bit, and that's where I think the NFL balances out, where it may be lacking with some of the great things college has. There is no professional league in the world and among, major sports that has the parity the NFL does year to year, where you can literally be a bottom feeding team and talk yourself into your team being a Super Bowl team. Like think about the year the Niners came off of in 2018, terrible year. They're 4-12. They, Jimmy looked good in 2017, then he gets hurt. You don't know what's going to happen. And they're the best team in football in 2019 for 19 and a half, 20 weeks, and they almost win the Super Bowl. They come, super close to doing it. If you had told me in August of 2019 that the 49ers would win 10 games, I'd be like, yeah, I could see that. If you had told me they'd win the Super Bowl, I'd be like, no way, absolutely not. But that's the beauty of it. The Bengals, same thing. Joe Burrow in year 2, they're picking number 1 the year before, and then win the Super Bowl the next year. So it's just like, to me.
Well, yeah, it's a lot of it too, Jordan. Last year, Ryan and I, we were looking at the schedules, and we said, we like the Niners to be the NFC representative of the Super Bowl, but we said, the Eagles, looking at their schedule, they're going to probably end up with the number 1 seed because they had a cakewalk of a schedule, the NFC East, and then the rest of their schedule. And, we knew they were a good team, but yeah, and they took full advantage of the schedule.
If the Niners would have handled their business against Denver and Chicago, 2 pretty poor teams, they would have.
Yeah, exactly. That's why the beginning of the season, the Niners, a lot of times they start slow and they're, 4-4, 4-5, 5-4 after 9 games. They really have to get after it this year. If Kyle said the other day, their goal is 2 home games, in the playoffs. So if that's your goal, every week has to be, you got to be right on it. So I got a couple things, and I want to get to the quarterback, the elephant in the room that everybody, talks about. We were talking about players, breakout seasons. I fully expect this year the Niners to be right up there with the Chiefs when it comes to offensive firepower points. And I'll tell you why. I was watching film and I've read stuff. I was watching video of Debo. He looks so much better this year compared to last year. I mean, last year he looks 20 pounds lighter and it looks like it's all muscle, and he's going to have a breakout year like he did in 2 years ago. I think Ayuk has his best year as a pro, a full year with CMC. Purdy behind or Lance or whoever's back there is going to be much better this year than they were. So I'm looking for the Niner offense to explode this year. And I think Kyle may have learned something in the last year or two of just put the pedal to the metal and start blowing teams out early. And if you can start blowing teams out early, that'll save a lot of injuries from having to play a lot of key guys, the full game. That's my take on it. Let me get your thought on that. And the final question for you as we wrap up our time with Jordan. Quarterback. What do you think is going to happen at quarterback? Is Purdy going to be opening day starter? Is it going to be Trey? Is it going to be Sam Darnold? What's your take on all of it? What do you think?
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, it's a bold take. I would say that the Niners have the best skill position groups in the NFL. If you look at wide receiver, tight end, running back, there's nobody in the league that has a more complete group. And I think Purdy was really good at effectively distributing the ball, kind of playing that classic point guard role almost, where it's like, hey, I'm going to get the ball into the hands of playmakers, put them in spots to make plays after the catch, and really give these guys a chance in contested catch situations and whatnot. I until proven otherwise, I would not bet against the Chiefs being the number 1 offense year after year. Mahomes is probably going to go down as the greatest quarterback we've ever seen when it's all said and done. I know it's blasphemous to some. We've had Brady winning 7 Super Bowls. Montana never lost a Super Bowl. But from a pure talent standpoint, Mahomes does things on a football field that I've never seen before. And again, he's a guy where we probably haven't seen the best football from him yet. And it's really scary to think about the fact that the next 5 years could get even more dominant for them. So, and Andy Reid, I have the utmost respect for Andy Reid. I've always been a big Andy Reid guy. What a person, too. He's an incredibly nice person as well. Very outgoing, very fun. He's always at the combine. You bump into him in Indianapolis. He's a really nice guy. So yeah, I would have a hard time betting against that. And then as for the quarterbacks, my stance has been the same pretty much all year. I wanted to get it out of the way. So in like April, I think, I wrote about it. And I pretty much said I didn't see a scenario where there was anything that Trey or Sam Darnold could do in camp that would take over what Purdy did in the playoffs and in regular season games last year. So unless there's an injury setback, if it's just purely everybody's healthy, everybody's good to go, who's starting, to me, it's like a lock that it's Purdy. Like I don't really think it's much of a debate at this point. I think the 49ers have really invited the door to controversy. They've been pretty vocal the whole time that, like, hey, when Brock is back, he's going to be the guy. And hey, if we would like to see Trey go out and take that job, we'd like to see him go out and do that. But again, practice today with no pads on. It's the second day of camp. Purdy hasn't been in 11 on 11s in 7 months now. So realistically, I don't see a world where what happened today overtakes what he put on tape in that live action last year. So to me, it's Purdy's job to lose. And I don't see, he's not a guy where I look at him and I'm like, okay, well, he does this wrong and they got away with it. They were able to hide this and, get away with it. Like, he has a game that I don't think is going to be – there's not going to be a lot of variance year to year. And as long as that group of skill position guys are there, I don't think that there's a world where Purdy just goes out and looks terrible or people are like, oh, the league figured him out. Like, he's a good quarterback. I think he proved it. And I think that it's going to be very difficult for anybody in preseason games or training camp practices to make Kyle Shanahan feel differently. Like, I just feel – I don't really like getting into, like, reading body language and overanalyzing things like that, but it just feels like Shanahan talks about Purdy differently than any of the quarterbacks that I've heard him talk about since he's been here. I can't blame him, to be honest, because I was exceptionally impressed with how he operated as a rookie. And, rest in peace to Coach Mike Leach, one of my favorite football minds of all time. One of the things that he stressed I used to watch his coaching clinics, and one of the things he stressed was that, like, when I'm looking for quarterbacks, I'm looking for a guy that's, his analogy was he was able to hit a stop sign with a snowball in the 5th grade, right? Because he's like, these guys just have it. Like, some of these guys are just born with it. And you can teach a guy to get a little bit more accurate. It's really hard. It's possible. But he always said that the best quarterbacks that he ever had were these guys where they just always seemed to have it. And when he was ranking the things that were most important in a quarterback, arm strength was like the 8th or 9th thing that he listed. And Mike Leach revolutionized passing attacks. And the way he was able to revolutionize the air raid and just the things that he brought to the sport of football, I'm sitting there thinking about it. I'm like, man, if Mike Leach doesn't care about arm strength, why the hell should I? So if you have it, it's great. But I don't think it's this big detrimental thing if Brock Purdy doesn't have this cannon for an arm because he's doing all these other things really well. And it doesn't mean that Trey Lance can't be good or can't win a starting job with the Niners or someone else. I just think that it means that in reality, it's going to be really hard. Like, I apologize if I'm off with this. It was a little bit before my time. But, I mean, at one point, Joe Montana was a league MVP, won a handful of Super Bowls, and he ends up getting hurt. And Steve Young comes in, and the Niners kind of made the decision to stick with Steve Young. And Joe Montana goes to Kansas City. Like, if it can happen to Joe Montana, it can happen to anybody. And that's
right.
Just good point.
And, competition is great because it pushes people to be better.
Mm-hmm. It breeds the best. That's what it brings out the best.
Nothing wrong with Trey Lance coming in much more motivated and ready and better mindset, better grasp of the offense, better, watch. My take was that Trey Lance was going to get better just watching Brock Purdy play the position last year, because I think he showed how Kyle's offense should be run so much better than Jimmy did. Because, I mean, he was able, of course, he had McCaffrey and he was able to check down. And the thing about Purdy that was so great is his able to elude the pocket. You know, he wasn't such the guy that was going to be running downfield, but he escaped just enough to, you know, to keep the play alive. And then he wasn't trying to make this heroic big play. He just took the check down.
Stayed within the offense.
And that's the thing I think Trey watched. And if Trey could pick that up, hey, you got a great backup quarterback if he's not your first stringer. And he becomes better. And maybe if they do end up trading him down the line, you can get something for him. So I think it'll be a good camp. Hopefully everybody stays healthy. That would be, I mean, that's the hardest thing. We already saw Joe Burrow go down today, get carted off the field. Fortunately, it sounds like it's only a calf injury. Hopefully it's not an Achilles or anything like that. I always get worried when I hear calf because that was KD's.
I had the same reaction. Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, Jordan, two real quick hitters before we let you go. Number one, being a Cal Bear guy, is it hard for you to wear 49er Stanford Cardinal red?
No, because, you know, so I didn't go to Cal. Like, it's so funny. Like, when people are like, oh, when did you graduate? I'm like, oh, I didn't go there. I just grew up rooting for Cal. And when I was young, Cal was good. That was when Tedford was there. Deshaun Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, Marshawn Lynch. Like, they're a fun team to watch. So, you know, I don't hate Stanford the way I think a lot of people do. And, like, I'll be honest.
Dislike.
People don't care about college football in the Bay Area. And
no, they
don't. I respect the people who do take the rivalry serious. Like, I have friends that went to Cal where they call them Stanford, or, you know, like with the U instead of the O. And it's like to me, it just feels very, you know, they're excellent academic schools. And if I ever have kids one day, I would be the proudest parent in the world to send my kid to Stanford or Cal. But we're talking about like football rivalries and just like the intensity and stuff. Like that little stare down they do with the axe, to me, it feels very cringy. And I'm like, dude, this is just, it feels forced. It's like, it's super lame. So I personally don't mind. Like, it's funny. Brad Graham, a good friend of mine who does the VSF Niners account, he's a Cal fan too, but he's gotten some like Stanford stuff in the past. And we went to a Niners game together a couple years ago, and I happened to be wearing a Cal pullover and he was wearing a Stanford one. We didn't plan it. It wasn't like a spoken thing. And it was so funny to me because it was like, you know, like I really don't care, but I was like, you know, I don't know if I would go out of my way to wear Stanford stuff, but I also am not like, you know, where I'm like, oh, I hate Stanford. Like there's, you know, admittedly, like USC was probably the team I grew up disliking the most because they were the team that always stood in the way of Cal winning something when I was young. So
04.
Yeah.
That game that Rodgers had the ball down at the goal line or the 10-yard line. They first down and 4 tries, they couldn't get it in. That would have been an undefeated season.
And lastly, I know you're a big Sopranos guy. I know you like the bada bing right there. Did Tony get whacked in the final episode or not?
You know, so I know that the guy, Dave Chase, I think the guy who created the show, I apologize if I got the name wrong, had
David
said
Chase?
like, oh, well, yeah, he did. I think he left it open-ended because at that point, if they wanted to make a movie, a spin-off, more seasons, it didn't completely close the chapter. But once they got to a point where they were like, we're not going to touch this, it's really easy to go back and be like, oh, yeah, he got whacked. That was the end of the series. I don't think so, because I think that would be such a terrible ending to such a great show. He has all these close encounters with dying, like Uncle June shoots him, you know, all these things that are happening, you know, the car flipping over with Christopher. Like, I just think that at the end of the day, like,
Junior Soprano, what a piece of shit in the Saints of Newark. Go on.
I just think like with a show like Breaking Bad, for example, we were talking about that before. Like I thought Breaking Bad got a great ending because you got that closure. And even after that, like I thought it was pretty obvious that like Walt had died, right? But for years after, people were like, no, he survived and he kept going. So even when they put him like dead, bleeding out on the screen, people still felt that way. Yeah. So I honestly wonder if some of it is just to create discussion, which is always fun, but I choose to believe that Tony Soprano did not die in a little diner with his family after all the things he had survived. Because to me, it just would have felt like such a lame ending. And, you know, I'll be honest, I thought that show really hit its stride. Like seasons like 2, 3, and 4 were just exceptional.
Yeah.
And it kind of, I did like the season with Steve Buscemi. I thought that was pretty good.
Oh, yeah, he was dominant.
It left a lot to be desired towards the end. And I felt like they knew that, where they were like, all right, we need to end this with some integrity, because if we just keep putting this out, it's not going to be the best product. So okay. I would love to hear your thoughts. I just choose to believe he didn't, because to me, that would be just such a lame ending to the show. Like,
no, I'm with you. I think that would be kind of cruel to have the show end that way. And yeah, I'm with you on that one. But hey, Jordan, right on, man. Appreciate you coming on and giving us these 49er insights. We'll check back with you.
Let's give let people know about Jordan, where they can read about him in Niners Nation. Give us where they can find you. You got your Twitter handle up there at @splash_cousin on Twitter. What's the Niners Nation? Is it Niner Nation? NinersNation.com, right?
Yeah, NinersNation.com. And, we're on all socials too. If you have Instagram, Twitter, we usually post articles through there as well. I'm really privileged to work with a great group of people there that do fantastic work. So even if you're not a fan of my stuff, which I totally respect, hopefully somebody else there has something that you might like. Great group of people that are putting out really good content every day. I know our editor, Kyle Posey, is flying in this weekend, so he and I will both be at practice for that padded practice on Monday. And any days that I might miss next week, he absolutely will be there. So it'll be some great analysis. He's a brilliant football guy, too. He's a football coach as well. So Kyle really knows his stuff. I always learn things from him when he comes out and we talk during camp and stuff. So if you're looking for a little bit more nuanced breakdown of some things that might be happening, I definitely recommend checking out what Kyle has to say when he's out here for those practices. And yeah, it's going to be a great time. Camp's a great. It's really hard because this year I've heard tickets were really hard to come by, which sucks because the first couple of years I went, it wasn't hard at all. But if you do have the opportunity to go to training camp and you haven't gone yet, I would absolutely recommend going, because it's the first real taste of football. And honestly, I think you'd be much better off spending money to go watch a practice than you would a preseason game. I think that you're going to get a higher level of intensity from the players in a practice rather than the preseason game. And the other thing that I love is that this is like the only time really for most of the year where these guys, you get the number one defense and the number one offense squaring off, and they can really, they're not like hitting each other really hard, but there's definitely a lot of ego on the line, right? And like last year, if I remember correctly, one of the practices I was at, I think it was Warner and Ayuk got into a little bit of a scuffle, and they had some words and they had to be separated. So I would definitely recommend anybody who could get out there and watch it, because it's a really fun time. I just don't want to say that and everybody's like, oh, I'd love to, I just can't get tickets, because that's what it seems like it's been from what I've heard. But yeah, it's a great time. And yeah, I'd love to come back on after I see a couple practices and let you guys know what I saw.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, matter of fact, I got your information in the description below.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And, one of the cool things I really like about Niners Nation is that we have like a comment section for all our articles and stuff too. So always looking for feedback. If there was something that, you wanted to have talked about, or, even just sharing your opinion, there's a great group of people who read there too, who are consistently there, because it's, the site was founded 15, 16 years ago when blogging was really in its peak, right? So that was before Twitter and all these social media sites. That was kind of the way to congregate and talk about the Niners and talk about football. So it's always nice seeing some of the same people. So if you're looking for another outlet to just have discussion about the 49ers and you want to share some thoughts, there's some really, really cool people that I'm, very lucky to have reading my work at Niners Nation, who are in the comments consistently sharing their thoughts. And yeah, it's great all around. I can't recommend it enough. I'm a company man through and through, but even just putting that bias aside.
All right, no problem.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you back in a couple of weeks. Give us an update during middle of camp. See what's going. Maybe first game, preseason game, I believe, is August 10th. Is it something like that?
Yeah, Raiders.
Yeah, we can talk about Luciano being the fastest major leaguer to 10 home runs in his career or something. Hopefully.
Oh, that would be awesome. That would be awesome.
There we go.
Nice. Just don't bat him. Just don't bat him in the 8th spot. Okay.
No.
All right, Jordan Elliott, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Jordan, thank you.
Thank you for the time, guys. Absolutely.
We'll catch up with you later. All right, thanks. All right,
good deal.
There you have it, Jordan Elliott from Niners Nation, and
that was good.
Excellent to have him and his knowledge with the Niners, and we'll have Jordan back on again, as you heard. It's August 13th, Chardal says the Niners' first game. That's right. The second game is August 19th, which is actually my birthday. Doesn't look like an enjoyable birthday this year. I'm scheduled for back surgery on the 10th. That's what it is. The 10th, I'm going to get back surgery. Yeah, not fun.
No baseball trades have happened.
David Robertson got traded from the Mets to the Marlins, so he's a decent closer. So that means the Mets are selling. So that's their closer. So if they're selling their closer, I mean,
maybe we can get Verlander.
I don't know, man. He has to want to come here.
I know, but I'm just saying that the darn. There's talk right now. The Dodgers are looking at Arenado.
Yeah. We'll see.
I mean, they could get David Bednar from, or is it David? What's the Giants' Bednar? Will Bednar. Yeah, David Bednar's with the Pirates.
Or even Jordan Hicks, because their negotiations broke down.
They could do that, yeah. Jeff Young has, I know Mark Feinstein indicates that the Giants have touched base with both Nicky Lopez, the Royals, and Paul DeJong, Cardinals. Both Tommy Edman and Brendan Donovan of the Cardinals.
DeJong and Lopez isn't going to move the needle.
Are drawing interest from multiple clubs. Yeah, they're all going to be looking at DeJong, and I'd rather just put Luciano out there.
Yeah, just keep Luciano. Is DeJong going to do anything different than Luciano?
Yeah, that's all. He gives you a little bit of a veteran presence, maybe. But you got to see what Luciano. That's why you don't pinch hit for him in the eighth, so you can see what he can do. It's like,
and here's another thing. Why bring if you're bringing it up because the team needs him? Why are you going to bat him eighth? You know what I'm saying? It doesn't really add up if you're wanting this guy to come up and prove.
It made no sense at all. I don't care what anybody says. Taking pressure off. The guy's just out here to have, like he said, he goes, when I have fun, good things happen, and I'm here to have fun. I know
you guys talked earlier today about Bobby Evans, but I really don't want Farhan to follow just sending out prospects for an average team. If you're a borderline title team and you need one or two guys to put you over the top,
that's different.
Hell yeah, go for it. Yeah. But if you're a 500 team that is barely getting by, and we've all seen it, how the team is and everything like that, then there's no freaking way that you can give up some prospects for a DeJong or from a Lopez.
MF, you make a good point. I didn't expect the Mets to trade with their rival, the Marlins.
Let me put that back up again. That super chat. I was getting ready to recognize that from Mark.
There we go here.
Yeah, Mark. Thanks for the $2. Says Los, great point about the Niners losing to Chicago and Denver. He says Trey is done, in my opinion. You? What's your thoughts?
No, I think Trey still has a chance to show exactly what he can do. He's never had McCaffrey. If anybody's going to run a run-past offense, it's going to be Lance. As good as Purdy is, he's not a running threat. So the dimension that Lance can give you in the RPO with a guy like McCaffrey, I mean, Shanahan can do a lot of different things. The thing about it is, I kind of compare this a little bit to Alex Smith versus Kaepernick. Alex Smith is just a cerebral, very accurate quarterback. Dropped the ball. He knew where to go with the ball. He knew where to place it. He had a little bit of mobility. But Cap came in and did something that Alex Smith couldn't do, which was throw the ball over the top. And let's face it, since Shanahan has been coach of the Niners, can any of you out there remember more than 3 plays that went over 50 yards? A bomb. I'm not talking about a 10-yard pass and they broke 5 tackles and it's a 70-yard Debo or Ayuk where they break tackles. I'm talking about a post route. Just every team in the league runs it, but I think I can remember 2 plays airing it out. And I'm not saying Purdy can't do that. He probably can. But Lance has a cannon, and Danny Gray won't make the team if Purdy's a quarterback, because what does Danny Gray do? He has 4.2 speed, and he can burn you over the top. Trust me, that makes a difference when you got to back the safeties up because they got to play, players going past them. But if everything is underneath, then it's a little bit easier to defend. So I wouldn't count out Trey just yet. I think Purdy does have the edge, but Lance has something to prove. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He's heard a lot of shit that he is a bust. And that kid has something I think to offer. So we'll see. Let it play out. Let the best man win. If after 6 weeks of camp, Purdy's a better player, let him be the quarterback. I personally don't care who wins the job. I want whoever gives the Niners the best chance to win a damn Super Bowl.
It's going to be interesting to see what these trades. We've seen 3 potential playoff teams, 2 shoe-ins, when the Braves and Dodgers make moves, and now the Marlins make a move.
God, they got another bullpen guy. God, their bullpen's already
The
strong.
Angels, fighting for a playoff spot, made a move. Sharhan still hasn't made a move. And yes, I called him Sharhan. My new name for Farhan is Sharhan, after our own star, Shardal. So Sharhan has still sitting, trying to figure out,
Nicky Lopez. That doesn't move the needle for you?
Oh gosh, I don't think I'd sleep tonight if they got Nicky Lopez. Is that
Soto's not on the block yet. All it is just talk.
So this is what's going to happen. Paxton's going to throw 8 innings, give up 1 run, 2 hits, strike out 11, and the Giants are going to trade for him.
Well, here's the thing. Maybe the Giants get lucky and he gets traded before he has to face the Giants.
Yeah,
that'd be great if he could pitch against the Red Sox.
Yeah, just flip dugouts. Like,
hey, Danny, if Paxton goes to the Giants and switches it around, damn, we still got that dinner bet, man. That sucks.
What was the dinner bet?
Whoever wins the series, 2 out of 3.
That's right. Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, you forgot already, huh?
What kind of dinner are we? What kind of dinner? I mean, are we talking like
whatever? Something.
Are we talking like a little Chipotle, or are we talking a big dinner like Ruth Chris?
Mickey D's.
Somewhere in the middle, decent spot for sure.
Yeah, that'll be good. I'll start looking at the menu real quick here and I'm getting myself hungry now thinking about that. Of course, the Giants probably will get 3 runs the whole series. Watch the Giants get 3 runs and win 2 games.
Yeah.
Dan didn't forget. He's just scared he picked the wrong team. That's what Liam says.
Oh, yeah. No, I did honestly forget when you said I forgot we bet. Yeah. I get a lot of little bets going here and there, but so
Eric, you're a witness. Everybody,
it is frustrating. We want to break some news. We want to break some news on like Giants.
Sure would be nice.
News,
yeah, right.
I mean, there's not even any rumors.
None, except for this one with Nicky Lopez and DeYoung.
Yeah,
what is that going to do?
Oh
well, no. I guess teams are interested in Giants starting pitching.
Well, please, someone take DeScalfani.
Yeah,
we'll give you all we want back is some candy corn or something.
I'll take 6 boxes of baseballs and a pitching machine for DeScalfani.
Yeah, there we go.
Good pitching machine.
Hey, seriously, there's some teams that might want Disco that either in the race figuring they need a arm and maybe they can do something with him, or a team that's out of the race that might want him. Cincinnati needs pitching. Came from Cincinnati, and maybe he would, they would want him back. Maybe, a team like the Angels just doesn't have much pitching. Maybe they would give us a minor leaguer for him.
I forwarded you a tweet, Dan, and I don't know who the source was, but supposedly teams are sniffing around for I don't know why, but Wood, Manea, or DeScalfani. Like, please, like, God, take them just to get their salary.
Yeah, I mean, you can bring up Wynn, you could bring up Harrison. There's 2 starters right there that are not going to do any worse than those guys. Let's see. I mean, Harrison, you might have to bring up Harrison as just one of those guys that becomes a 3 or 4 inning guy right now out of the bullpen. Some guys do great in the bullpen their first year coming out,
Right.
that it'd be great. I'm just trying to find some darn.
Hey, real quick, just to divert real quick. What happened to Chris Benoit? Did he have an accident or something?
No. He murdered
What?
his son and his wife. He had some kind of a rage.
Who's this?
That's right. Now I remember. And then he committed suicide, right?
Chris Benoit.
Who?
He was one of the best. Chris Benoit. He was a great wrestler.
I forgot about that.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a roid
and
rage.
you know, wrestling is very big. You know, there was a big article. You know, a lot of them used roids. I mean, it was obvious.
Yeah, roid rage.
And who knows if that was the main reason, but he had some issues, and he killed his wife and he killed his.
I forgot, and then he committed suicide, right?
Killed his 4-year-old son and then committed suicide.
Yep.
Yeah,
Man, I forgot about that. You know, it was funny. Do you remember when Chris Benoit and Chris Jericho had a feud?
Yeah.
And then Chris Jericho always called him Benoit. Chris Benoit.
Benoit. Yeah.
I forgot
Not
about
to
that.
be confused with Benoit Benjamin, former NBA center.
Chris Benoit.
Yeah, that was a really sad story.
I forgot about that. Okay,
just like Eddie Guerrero dying really young.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of wrestlers passed away much too early. Put a lot of shit in their bodies.
Chardon knows how to work that Wikipedia.
Oh man, that's rough to hear. No more wrestling on the show. Banned now.
Yeah.
Banned
till Wednesday nights.
But that was a good football conversation.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
And Jordan knows his stuff for sure.
So tomorrow night we'll be back. Friday night, Giants Red Sox, probably a 10 o'clock start.
Yeah,
Game
it's a
time
later.
at 7:15 on Fridays. Doggone it. But we'll come on after the ball game, and maybe, just maybe, there'll be a trade. We're down to. I mean, this is what drives me crazy. I know a lot of it has to do with. Let me get on my. Okay. Here's what ticks me off. I know a lot of trades, especially this year. Teams are undecided, like the Cubs, maybe the Mets until tonight. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do. And so that's why deals haven't been made. But the Cardinals are selling.
Mm-hmm.
The Cardinals are selling.
And now the Mets are selling.
Yeah. Go make the darn offer and get the lefty Jordan Montgomery, and go get DeJong if you need a middle infielder. And if that's the only move, if that's the kind of moves you're going to make, those are easy moves. I'm telling you, those are easy moves because those two guys are basically free agents. The club has an option on DeJong next year at $12.5 million. They're probably not going to exercise it. Montgomery's a free agent. You don't have to give up a ton for these guys. Okay, we're seeing that.
You know what's going to happen? The Giants will get DeJong, but the Dodgers are going to get Arenado, Montgomery, and Hicks.
Probably something like that, because dang Sharhan won't pull the trigger. Well, I mean, remember we brought this up about a week and a half ago. We said hit first before anybody.
Like, yeah, I've been talking about that all the time.
Because if you wait till the last minute, if you wait till New Year's Eve for the ball to drop at the very last minute, all these other teams are going to want them too. And
Tiger doesn't change its stripes.
The price goes up. Tiger could have got these guys a week and a half ago and probably not needed to give up a lot.
Yep. Tiger doesn't change his stripes, and Farhan always waits and waits. That's why he drafted Cole Waits, because Farhan loves waiting. I'll tell you, irritating, because the whole thing with Gausman. I'm going to wait. I want to see what the market does. He gets, $110 million he signs for 5 years. So what's he do last year, right? He doesn't sign anybody soon, and he doesn't sign anybody in the offseason like when he could have signed Rodon. The price went up as soon as the winter meetings took off, and all of a sudden prices are like, it's just like you're following the market. Now Farhan's chasing the market, and he gives $350 million for Correa because he waited.
For a smart guy, he's kind of dumb in that respect.
Yeah. He never leads; he always lags.
For a guy that like knows money, and the owner's like, "Well, he's making a $75 million." He could have made him about $120 million with some of them dumb contracts he gave out, but because he waits. But that's what he does.
Yeah, I got two new. I got Sharhan and Fardal. That's the new names. Fardal.
Sharhan and Fardal. Wow.
Yeah, there we go. Fardal.
All right.
Change your name to Fardal, Fly. No, we don't. No, his name's Shardal, but we are going to give Farhan the Sharhan treatment for a while. So I think that's about it, guys. Wrap it up.
Yep.
Anything else you guys want? Closing thoughts?
I'm good.
Good.
We're good.
Good show. In and out.
All right. Well, what fart doll? Close to fart doll. Will says, "What do we got to? We got any good music? Play us out on?" Hold on. Let me get my guitar out. All right. Jordan Elliott, thanks to special guest Jordan Elliott tonight from Niners Nation. Check them out, ninersnation.com.
Check out the description. The link is in the description.
In the description. All right. And for Los D, Eric, better known as Romo, I'm Dan Cochimilio, and we say so long. Arrivederci. Ciao.